Morning folks, it's Farmer Tom and I'm up with the larks this morning because I was hoping that our sheep would have had their lambs. I went out to see them early this morning at first light and they haven't, so we'll keep watching that situation. But I thought it'd be a great time to show you the samples of the crops which I planted to see how they're doing. You remember we were going to see if the beans had come into flower, if the linseed had come into flower and how they were all progressing. So we'll go and have a little look now and I'll give you your update. So we start off with our barley. This is spring sown barley. Typically when we grow this in the field, this goes to make beer. And as you can see, it's getting pretty tall. It's starting to get a little bit tufty at the top. You see that? There's the beautiful characteristic tufts at the top of the ears of barley. And you might be able to see that the ears are just starting to form. Can you see that there? They're about to burst out. And we can see, in fact, one has already. So not only have they, in the last couple of weeks, started to form an ear, but actually those ears are starting to come out as well. So that's pretty exciting. It feels like there won't be long till harvest. And the next crop we were going to look at were our beans, and we were going to see if they had come into flower. And they have. They're beautiful. They've shot on, and they've started to come into flower, which is of course what they do before they form the seed. So that's great news for our beans. These beans, again, if grown in the field, will probably go either to animal feed or to North Africa, depending on what kind of beans they are. North Africa is a really big market for our beans, so it's really important. So after beans, in our alphabetic tour of my sample crops was linseed, and like the beans, we were going to see if the linseed had come into flower, and the linseed too has come into flower. The linseed forms these beautiful blue flowers. It really makes the field, when you've got an entire field of linseed, it really makes it absolutely wonderful. So again, they come into flower before they start to form the seed. At this end I can see some of the seed heads just starting to form, and these blue flowers open up every morning, and then the flower heads close up, and so overnight it looks like there aren't any flowers there at all. So perhaps some of these are still opening up this morning. After linseed came oats, and like the barley, well, everything's shot on, hasn't it? And the main reason is because I've been watering it. But like the barley, the oats have started to form their seed heads as well. You can see they grew up like a grass, and then the seed heads have burst out, and they're just starting to lean over in that characteristic oat way. And that's what we'll be harvesting. After oats, O comes pea for peas. And the peas are legumes like the beans, so they flower in a similar way, although they look very different at the moment. And you can see they're just starting to come out into flower. There they are. So I think they're looking pretty well. I've got a little bit of a problem with my establishment, so I've got a bit of a miss here in the middle, and a few weeds, which I can see. But otherwise they're looking pretty well. And then finally, we move on to our wheat. I had a little experiment with the wheat, because on the left here I put some a winter sown variety, or typically winter sown variety, to see what would happen. On the right, from this point onwards, I sowed a spring sown variety, and the spring sown variety has shot up, is looking pretty well. I sowed the wheat after everything else, but it's looking pretty good. It's definitely behind the others. There's certainly nowhere near forming an ear, but you can see we call this stem extension, where it's just starting to shoot up. The stems are pretty solid, but it's just starting to shoot up. A little bit yellow there. That might be because it's lacking in some mineral or nutrient, and that's probably because I've put a few too many seeds in there. So if we plant the seeds too densely, then that can cause a lacking of minerals. And the winter sown wheat, well, it's not looking quite so well. Normally the winter sown wheat needs a good frost or a little bit of winter to encourage that to go into stem extension and start to produce a grain. So maybe we won't get anything from that this year. The wheat, of course, a lot of people will know, goes to produce bread, but it has many other uses, from biofuels to animal feed. And in fact, the wheat in our fields typically goes to have all the components extracted. And so if you're in hospital on a drip, the glucose there will often come from a wheat, and it could even be from our wheat. So here we are. aren't the crops looking absolutely beautiful? They're the best crops I've ever grown. Out in the field where it's much, much drier, I would say the situation is getting pretty desperate. Crops like this spring wheat that have really shot on, having been watered every day, out in the field without water, are looking pretty desperate. Like us, they need water pretty regularly in order to grow properly, and they certainly haven't had that. Anyway, it's lovely to see these crops as they could be growing, to see their potential. Little blackbird there, just popping around to say hello. But it's great to see them out in flower as well. So the beans look beautiful in flower. The linseed look absolutely amazing. Anyway, we'll see in a few weeks' time, when they've all started to produce a seed, or all produced a seed, they'll start to senesce or to die off, which they'll die off naturally. And then we'll bring them to harvest. So we'll see if we can get some seeds from them. Anyway, this is the update from our crop samples. Wherever you are, have a great day. Bye for now.